Good morning, everybody. Hey, I wanted to respond to a question or comment that I had on a deadlifting video that I posted this morning when I was talking about morning routine. And I figured this would be the easiest way to do it because I'm driving to the clinic right now to see patients, so I cannot be texting and typing and doing that, but I can just talk as I'm driving. So that's why I'm going to do this. So the question was, what do you say to patients who think that deadlifts or say that deadlifts are bad for them or the worst thing ever, or a doctor told them that? What do you say to a doctor who says that? Because a lot of doctors who don't exercise or don't know anything about anything make comments like this. And just real quick as a side note before we get into this and before I give you my explanation of the truth according to me, is if you're wondering about what we do or why we exist or what Movable University is, we help with the systems of putting a organized corrective exercise department into a chiropractic practice, everything from A to Z of like how to train the staff, resources for the staff, how to bill for it, how to motivate patients, how to track progress, how to the vocabulary to use, the verbiage as far as how to link this into chiropractic, how it fits in the chiropractic model, automated systems, everything that's in Movable University. And if you want to find out more, go to movableuniversity.com. And there's a bunch of resources on that page you can dive into. One of them is you can grab a book, Move All Secrets, and you can grab it for free. We printed a bunch. We paid for all of that. You just cover shipping. You get the book. So check out the site, and you can see that. And I would recommend getting it. It's 18 chapters. Gives you like the 10,000-foot perspective of all the moving parts. And it's a quick read, and it will give you a lot of insight, and I think get you motivated and excited. Whether you're already doing exercise in practice, and you're like, ooh, those are some things that we're missing. That's why patients aren't engaged. Or if you haven't done it at all and you want to put an exercise department into your practice, but you don't know how. So it's for both camps of chiropractors. And this is exclusively for chiropractors. I'm a full-time practicing chiropractor. I'm heading to my clinic right now to see patients and to answer the question. So the question again is, what do you say to patients who think deadlifting is like a bad thing, or healthcare providers who maybe make that comment to a patient that deadlifts are bad for them? And here's what we do. There's a saying that we have in our belt system of functional movement, which is how we organize progressive exercises to improve functional movement, decrease pain, improve range of motion, improve functionality, stability, all that stuff. So we have this belt system of organized progressions, because that was the biggest thing that I felt was missing in this whole functional movement world of how to integrate this with a chiropractic practice. Is like, how do you organize these progressions, and how do you track them, and how does a patient understand where they're going and why it even matters that they're learning these things? So in that belt system, there's a saying that trainer Tony has been saying quite a bit, and he is my co-collaborator on all this stuff. He says all roads lead to the deadlift. We teach a deadlift to our patients with a kettlebell first. We rarely get in a barbell deadlift in office, but kettlebell deadlift, pretty much everyone's learning some version of a deadlift, whether it's up on a platform, whether it's all the way down to the floor with a kettlebell and increasing the weight. And the way we explain this to a patient is we explain that really one of the foundational movement patterns that we actually cover on their very first corrective exercise functional movement visit, there's three things. It's breathing, hip hinge, and core. Breathing, hip hinge, and core. And the hip hinge is a vital movement that a lot of people never learn. They don't know how to do it properly. They don't know what it is. I mean, it's amazing. If you've ever taught a hip hinge before, you'll understand what I'm saying as far as how clueless so many people are that that's how you're supposed to move when you bend forward to pick something up, or when you bend down to do anything, because a squat is a straight vertical descent up and down like a piston, and excuse me, that's a good movement. However, that can be somewhat limited by mobility, by knee stiffness or knee pain, knee mobility, by ankle dorsiflexion. There's like multiple things in a squat that makes it hard, especially for the older population, to squat to get down to the ground to pick something up. However, a hip hinge is really a much, I think, easier way to bend down and pick something up. And if you look in any sort of weightlifting aspect, pretty much everyone's stronger in a deadlift compared to a squat. Why is that? Because a squat is harder to do. It's harder to pick something up and pick it up with leg strength versus picking something up with a combined leg and back and hip and glute and pelvic strength, which is more of a deadlift. So now how do we explain deadlift to a patient? Well, they learn very early on that a hip hinge is an extremely important movement to learn. A deadlift is a loaded hip hinge. It's just weight on a hip hinge. So we are stressing that most, if not all of these lumbar spine injuries, lumbosacral injuries, is because people fail to have stiffness in their lumbar spine. Now, I'm not saying hypomobility and rigidity, like from a negative standpoint of they can't move well. I'm saying stiffness, like knowing how to abdominal brace, knowing how to have stability, core stability, spine stability, which, I mean, core is really spine. It's the abdominal muscles and all the paraspinal muscles and supporting structures that engage the core. The whole core is all the muscles in that entire circumference. So now that's a very important part of the body to be able to stabilize, is the lumbar spine. So in order to be able to move, when you have lumbar spine core stability, you have to have the segments above, or the region above, move, which is the thoracic spine. So we need to increase thoracic mobility, and we need to increase hip mobility. So both of those things need to be done: thoracic mobility and hip mobility. Okay, so this is a thing that we explain to our patients: thoracic mobility, hip mobility. And you need to be able to load that movement, because that movement carries over into activities of daily living, such as bending over to tie your shoe. You're going to hip hinge, and then you're going to take one leg hip hinge, which is actually a piece of a Turkish get-up. That's what's also really awesome. Just a side note. That's something I'm constantly showing people for 30 seconds. I'll show this in the adjusting room. Is they say, well, you know, I don't feel like I'm flexible enough to get low enough, or I have to pick up my child. How do I do that? And we say, well, first you learn the hip hinge, and then if you can load the hip hinge, that's even great, even if you don't have like an extreme amount of range of motion, but just loading it, understanding how to engage your core and your hip stabilizers, your hip muscles, while you have mobility through your femoroacetabular joint. But then what we show them is how to go to a single leg, how to hip hinge through one leg, which is really a Turkish get-up. There's a whole sequence of getting down from a get-up where you step back with one leg into a lunge, and then you pivot the down leg. Now, granted, this is for someone who doesn't have a knee replacement, who can put weight on their knee and so on. So there's workarounds for other people that don't have this amount of mobility or functionality, but bear with me, hear me out. So they basically step back, they lunge back, they put their back knee down, they windshield wiper that back leg. They then hip hinge through the down leg, okay? So the down leg hip hinges, and that's how they get close to the ground without losing lumbar spine stability, without losing core stability. All right, so how do we explain to the patient? Hip hinge is a foundational movement that every human being should know how to do. And you should have flexibility through your hips and strength and power through your hips, because those are driving muscles and movements for every athletic activity or just activities of daily living. Your lumbar spine should be able to be stable and supported and have good abdominal and core strength. And so the deadlift is actually one of the healthiest movements to be able to teach a loaded hip hinge, get you strong so that you can live a life of certainty and not feel like you're frail and weak and you're going to hurt yourself if you try to pick something up. Okay? That's why we teach a deadlift to everyone. And a deadlift is a good exercise to do when it's done properly, but they need to learn proper hip hinging. They need to restore some level of hip mobility through some mobility exercises and drills, and they need to make sure they can engage their core before they're thrown into a weighted hip hinge or a deadlift. So hopefully that explains it. Good morning, Dr. Dwayne Ackerman. I know you love deadlifts, Dr. Dwayne Ackerman. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. There's a bunch of people on this live, but only a couple of the names pop up, so that's why I'm saying hi to Dr. Dwayne and everyone else who's on here. Thanks for joining me. Go back and watch this. This is, I think, a helpful thing to explain to patients deadlift, and honestly, it makes it more fun in practice every day when you can talk about stuff that you love as well. And if you're a chiropractor who doesn't deadlift or wants to get into some more exercise for yourself, I mean, squat, deadlift, bench, those are the core movements that are really, really helpful ones to learn, and you can do them with kettlebells as well, not really the bench as much. You can do kettlebells on the ground with a bench, but honestly, squat, deadlift, bench, and then kettlebell squat, kettlebell swing, kettlebell shoulder press, and then kettlebell snatch and kettlebell get up. Like all those exercises I just listed, if you can do that stuff to a pretty decent level, you're going to have a good, healthy, long life in most cases. And that's what we teach our patients. Not the bench necessarily, but we teach in the kettlebell realm. All right, over and out. I'm pulling up to the clinic. Appreciate y'all. Check out movewelluniversity.com to get more information. We're still sending out our book for free. You just cover shipping. It's called Move Well Secrets. You can find a link on that page, movewelluniversity.com, to grab the book. We've been shipping out books left and right every day, and so if you want a copy, grab it before they are gone. All right, over and out. Appreciate y'all. Have a great day.